Welcome back to the deep dive.
Okay.
This time, we're taking you on a journey
Okay.
into the fascinating world of your inner voice, guided by Ethan Kross's book, Chatter, The Voice in Our Head, Why It Matters, and How to Harness It.
Right.
Think of this as your one-hour crash course, brought to you by the One-Hour Guide by Anil Nasu,
Okay.
on understanding how that voice can both help and hinder you,
Right.
and most importantly, how to make it work for you.
It's amazing how much power that voice has, isn't it?
Yeah.
We often go through life feeling at the mercy of our thoughts.
Yeah.
But Kross shows us that we can actually gain control and change the script.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he starts by acknowledging something we all experience, that feeling of having two distinct voices in our heads.
Okay.
It's like having an inner coach and a relentless inner critic battling it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kross calls this the duality of self-talk. On one hand, we have this inner coach who helps us plan, process emotions, and solve problems.
It's the voice that encourages us to keep going when things get tough.
Yeah, that's the voice I need to be friends with.
Yeah.
But then there's that other voice, the inner critic, that can really wreak havoc.
Right, and that's where the chatter comes in.
Okay.
Kross defines chatter as those repetitive negative thoughts that cycle through our minds, amplifying our anxieties and undermining our confidence.
Yeah.
It's that voice that tells you you're not good enough. You're gonna fail. Everyone's judging you.
I know that voice all too well.
Yeah.
But Kross doesn't just leave us to suffer in silence.
No.
He offers a toolbox of strategies to help us manage and even silence that inner critic.
One of the most powerful tools he introduces is the concept of zooming out.
Okay.
It's about gaining perspective on our situation, detaching from the emotional intensity of the moment, and seeing things from a more objective viewpoint.
So it's like taking a mental step back from
Yeah.
drama unfolding in our heads.
Yeah.
I can see how that'd be helpful. Right.
But how do we actually zoom out in practice?
Kross offers a few techniques.
Yeah.
And one that I find particularly fascinating is self-distancing. It's this idea of talking to yourself in the third person as if you were advising a friend.
Wait, you mean like instead of saying, I'm so stressed about this presentation,
Yeah?
I would say, my name, you've got this, you've prepared well, and you're going to do great.
Precisely.
Okay.
It might feel a little strange at first,
Well, yeah.
but studies have shown that this simple shift in perspective can create psychological distance from your emotions, allowing you to think more rationally and calmly.
I'm actually curious to try that out myself.
Yeah.
It's funny how sometimes the simplest things can be the most effective, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the beauty of Kross's approach is that he backs up these techniques with solid scientific research.
Yeah.
It's not just about feel-good advice. There's real evidence to support these strategies.
Speaking of evidence,
Yeah.
Kross shares some pretty compelling examples of how people have used these techniques
Yeah.
to overcome challenges and achieve success. He talks about how Jeff Bezos used zooming out to navigate the early criticism of Amazon, for instance.
That's right. Bezos was able to stay focused on his long-term vision
Right.
of creating an everything store. By not getting bogged down in the day-to-day negativity and doubt,
Yeah.
he effectively zoomed out to see the bigger picture. And that helped him persevere.
That's so inspiring.
Yeah.
It shows that these techniques aren't just for dealing with everyday stress, but also for tackling major life obstacles.
Exactly. And Kross reminds us that we can all learn from these examples.
Yeah.
Just like Bezos used zooming out to achieve his goals,
Yeah.
we can apply this technique to stay focused on what truly matters to us, even when faced with challenges.
So we've got this zooming out technique
Yes.
to get some mental distance from our problem.
Right.
But sometimes, don't we just need to vent to someone? They're social creatures,
Right.
and connecting with others is incredibly important, especially when we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed.
Right. But I have a feeling Kross has a slightly nuanced perspective on this.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
He cautions us against something he calls co-rumination.
Okay.
Have you ever noticed how sometimes venting to a friend can actually make you feel worse?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just end up rehashing the same negative thoughts over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's like you're feeding each other's anxieties.
Exactly. That's co-rumination in action. Instead of finding solutions or gaining perspective, you're just amplifying the negativity.
So what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Should we just keep everything bottled up inside?
Not at all. Kross emphasizes the importance of selective sharing.
Okay.
It's about being mindful of who you turn to for support and what kind of support you're seeking.
So if I'm looking for a pep talk or a cash perspective.
Yeah. I might reach out to a different friend than if I just need to vent and process my emotions.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the difference between venting to let off steam and seeking constructive solutions.
Right.
And it's also about knowing who in your life is good for each.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like instead of just blindly venting to anyone who will listen,
Yeah.
we need to be more strategic about who we share our struggles with.
Exactly. And Kross offers some really practical tips on how to do that. He suggests asking yourself questions like, is this person likely to offer helpful advice or
Yeah.
just validate my negative feelings? Or does talking to this person usually leave me feeling better or worse?
Those are great questions to consider.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of something I've learned from the 1 Hour Guide by Enel Nathu.
Right.
We have a lot more control over our emotional well-being than we often realize.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of Kross's book, the idea that our physical environment can actually influence our inner state.
Ooh, I'm really intrigued by this. So you're telling me that our surroundings can actually impact our mental chatter.
More than you might think. In the next part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we'll explore how things like nature, our workspaces, and even the objects we surround ourselves with can affect our inner dialogue.
I can't wait to learn more.
Yeah.
It seems like we're starting to uncover a whole new dimension to managing our thoughts and emotions.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned.
And don't forget to check out the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu for even more insights on this and other fascinating topics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the deep dive, where we're exploring Ethan Kross's fascinating book, Chatter.
Right.
Before the break,
Yeah.
we were discussing how even simple things,
Right.
like who we choose to vent to,
Yeah.
can impact that inner voice. But now we're getting into how our physical surroundings play a role. It's almost like our minds are influenced by more than just our thoughts, right?
It's so true.
Yeah.
Kross dives into the science behind how our environment shapes our mental state.
Okay.
He even calls one chapter Outside In, highlighting this connection.
Okay, I'm ready to have my mind blown.
Okay.
What kind of environmental factors are we talking about here?
Well, let's start with something many of us intuitively know.
Okay.
Nature.
Yeah.
Kross cites studies showing that even brief exposure to nature, like taking a walk in a park, can significantly reduce stress hormones and improve mood.
I'm feeling calmer just thinking about a park right now.
Yeah.
But why is that?
Yeah,
Does Kross explain what's happening in our brains when we're surrounded by nature?
he does.
Okay.
He explains that nature helps regulate our nervous system and restore our attention, which in turn quiets that inner chatter. It's like hitting the reset button on our overthinking minds.
Fascinating. Yeah. So getting out in nature is one way to manage our mental state. But what about those of us who spend a lot of time indoors,
Right.
especially at work?
Yeah,
Can we create a workspace that's less likely to trigger chatter?
absolutely.
Okay.
Kross argues that our workspaces can either fuel our stress
Right.
or help us feel grounded and focused.
Okay.
Clutter, noise, lack of personal touches.
Right.
These can all contribute to a sense of overwhelm.
Okay. I'm definitely guilty of having a cluttered desk.
Oh, yeah.
So decluttering is officially on my to-do list.
Yeah.
But what about those personal touches you mentioned?
Yeah.
Does Kross have any specific suggestions?
He does.
Okay.
He highlights the power of what he calls symbolic objects. These are things that hold personal meaning for us.
Okay.
Family photos, travel souvenirs, inspiring quotes.
Yeah.
Even a small plant that brings you joy.
So it's like surrounding ourselves with little reminders of things that ground us and bring us happiness.
Exactly. When you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, those objects can act as anchors for your mind.
Right.
They help you reconnect with your values, your goals, the things that truly matter to you.
Right.
And that shift in focus can be incredibly powerful in quieting the negative chatter.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's like having a little piece of your happy place right there on your desk.
Yeah?
I'm starting to see a theme here.
Uh-huh.
Nature, organization, personal touches.
Right.
It's all about creating a sense of calm and intentionality in our environment,
Yeah.
which in turn helps us manage our inner world.
You're picking up on exactly what Kross is emphasizing.
Okay.
He even talks about the power of rituals,
Okay.
both physical and mental, to create a sense of order and control.
Rituals like a morning routine.
Yes.
Okay.
Things like starting your day with a meditation or a walk, taking a few minutes to write in a gratitude journal,
Right.
or even just having a cup of tea in a certain chair
Right.
can help to center you and quiet your mind.
You know, that reminds me of some of the advice Anil Nathu shares in his 1 Hour Guide.
Uh-huh.
He talks about the importance of establishing routines and practices that support our mental well-being.
Yeah.
It seems like Kross is echoing that sentiment here.
He is.
Right.
It's all about creating an environment,
Hmm.
both internal and external,
Right.
that supports a calmer, more focused mind.
Okay.
And speaking of focusing the mind,
Yeah.
I think it's time to move on to the final section of Kross's book,
Okay.
where he introduces some really powerful techniques for directly managing that inner chatter.
Okay, this is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah.
Let's hear about these techniques.
Okay.
What does Kross call this section?
He calls it mind magic.
Okay.
And it's all about learning to consciously shape our thoughts and responses to that inner critic.
Mind magic.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
It sounds almost like we're about to learn some Jedi mind tricks to silence that negative voice. Yeah.
I wouldn't go that far. But Kross does present some incredibly effective strategies for gaining control of our inner dialogue.
I can't wait to hear about them.
Okay.
So what's the first trick up our sleeve?
One of the most powerful techniques Kross highlights is visualization.
Right.
Athletes use this all the time to mentally rehearse their performance. But Kross suggests we can use it in any area of our lives to build confidence and reduce anxiety.
So if I'm dreading a big presentation,
Yeah.
I could visualize myself delivering it flawlessly.
Right.
And that would actually help me feel more confident.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By repeatedly visualizing a positive outcome,
Right.
you're essentially training your brain to believe it's possible, which in turn helps to quiet those self-doubting thoughts.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
But what about those times when things don't go as planned?
Right.
How do we avoid spiraling into negativity when we face setbacks?
That's where reframing comes in, which
Yeah.
we touched on earlier.
Right.
Kross reminds us that every experience, even the challenging ones, offers valuable lessons.
Right.
Instead of seeing setbacks as failures, we can choose to reframe them as opportunities for growth.
So instead of dwelling on the mistake,
Yeah.
we ask ourselves, what can I learn from this?
Precisely.
Okay.
It's a subtle shift in mindset,
Right.
but it can make all the difference in how we respond to challenges. And it helps us break free from that cycle of negative self-talk.
This is all starting to make so much sense.
Yeah.
It's like we're learning to become the masters of our own minds
Yeah.
rather than letting our thoughts control us.
That's the essence of Kross's message.
Okay.
And he goes on to introduce a few other mind management techniques,
Okay.
including one that ties back to something we discussed earlier, rituals.
Wait, rituals again?
Yeah.
I thought we were done with those back in the outside in section.
Remember, rituals can be both physical and mental.
Okay.
While we talked about physical rituals like morning routines earlier, Kross also highlights the power of mental rituals for managing our inner world.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
What kind of mental rituals are we talking about here?
Things like repeating affirmations,
Okay.
engaging in gratitude exercises, or even just taking a few moments to consciously shift your focus to something positive.
Okay.
These mental habits can help us stay grounded and interrupt those negative thought patterns.
So it's like having a mental toolkit of strategies to call upon when that inner critic starts getting too loud.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is that you can personalize this toolkit.
Right.
Some techniques will resonate with you more than others.
Right.
The key is to experiment and find what works best for you.
I love that approach.
Yeah.
It's not about following a rigid set of rules,
Right.
but rather about discovering what empowers you to manage your own mind.
And speaking of empowerment, I think it's time to shift gears and talk about one of Kross's most intriguing techniques, distanced self-talk.
Distance self-talk.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
Right?
Haven't we already discussed this?
We touched on it briefly in the context of zooming out,
Right.
but Kross dedicates an entire chapter to this technique,
Okay.
exploring its nuances and applications in various situations.
Okay, I'm ready to dive deeper.
Okay.
Remind me again,
Mm-hmm.
what exactly is distanced self-talk?
It's that practice of talking to yourself in the third person,
Mm-hmm.
as if you were advising a friend or observing yourself from an outside perspective.
Right, like
Yeah.
saying, your name, you can handle this.
Yeah.
Instead of, I can handle this.
Right.
I remember you mentioned that it creates psychological distance from our emotions.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And Kross goes on to explain that this distance allows us to tap into a wiser, more objective part of ourselves.
Yeah.
It's like we're accessing the advice we would give to a friend,
Mm-hmm.
but applying it to our own situation.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I can see how that would be helpful in those moments when our emotions are running high. And we're struggling to think clearly.
It's like we're stepping outside of the drama of our own minds and gaining a fresh perspective. And Kross shares some amazing examples of how people have used distanced self-talk to overcome challenges, make tough decisions, and perform under pressure.
I'm really starting to see the power of this technique.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're tapping into an inner coach who can guide us through difficult times.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of another important point Kross emphasizes, the concept of micro-wins.
Micro-wins?
Yeah.
What are those?
It's about breaking down big challenges into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
Instead of getting overwhelmed by the enormity of a task, we focus on achieving those smaller milestones, which gives us a sense of progress and boosts our motivation.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Exactly. By focusing on those smaller wins, we build momentum and avoid getting paralyzed by fear or self-doubt.
And each micro-win reinforces our belief in our own abilities.
Exactly.
Which, in turn, helps to quiet the chatter.
Exactly.
I love this idea.
Yeah.
It's so practical and empowering. Instead of getting bogged down by the enormity of a goal, we can break it down into smaller steps and celebrate those little victories along the way.
And that celebration, that feeling of accomplishment, no matter how small, can be incredibly powerful in shifting our mindset and silencing that inner critic.
I'm starting to see a common thread running through all of these mind magic techniques. It's about taking control. Shifting our perspective. And finding ways to interrupt those negative thought patterns that can hold us back.
You've hit the nail on the head. And the great thing is that Kross provides us with a whole toolbox of strategies to choose from. It's not about finding one magic bullet, but rather about experimenting and discovering what works best for you in different situations.
And I imagine that the 1-hour guide by Anil Nathu offers some great resources for exploring these techniques further and putting them into practice.
Absolutely. Anil Nathu's work complements Ethan Kross's insights beautifully. He provides practical tips, real-world examples, and even exercises to help you develop a stronger, more resilient mindset.
So if you're ready to take control of your inner dialogue and turn that chatter into a force for good, be sure to visit the 1-hour guide website. You'll find a wealth of resources to support you on your journey.
And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a powerful reminder from Kross. You are not a victim of your own thoughts. You have the power to choose how you respond to them. And with the right tools and strategies, you can transform your inner dialogue from a source of stress into a catalyst for growth and success.
That's such an empowering message.
It is.
We've explored some incredible techniques for managing that inner chatter today. But I have a feeling there's still more to discover in Kross's book. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive. Where we'll delve into even more fascinating insights and strategies for harnessing the power of your inner voice. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of Ethan Kross's chatter. And I have to say, this book has really given me a whole new perspective on how to manage that inner voice. We've covered so much ground already.
We have.
Zooming out, the power of our environment, those mind magic techniques. But I'm ready for more. Well, let's dive back in then. What else can we add to our toolkit for dealing with chatter?
One technique that Kross highlights, and that we've touched upon a couple of times already, is the power of rituals.
We talked about morning routines and gratitude exercises. But I have a feeling there's even more to explore with rituals, right?
Absolutely. Kross explains that rituals, even simple ones, can help us create a sense of order and control, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed or anxious.
So how can we use rituals to manage chatter? Do you have any examples?
Sure. Think about athletes who have pre-game rituals. These rituals help them focus their minds and get into the zone. But rituals aren't just for athletes. We can create rituals for any situation where we need to calm our minds and boost our confidence.
So if I'm feeling nervous before a big presentation, I could create a little ritual to help me center myself and feel more prepared.
Exactly. It could be something as simple as taking a few deep breaths, listening to a specific song that pumps you up, or even just visualizing yourself succeeding.
I love how Kross emphasizes the power of even small, seemingly insignificant actions.
Yeah.
It's like those little rituals can have a ripple effect on our entire mental state.
It's amazing how much control we can gain over our inner world just by incorporating some simple practices into our lives. And speaking of control, Kross also highlights the importance of something he calls cognitive reappraisal.
Cognitive reappraisal.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty technical.
Yeah.
What is it exactly?
It's basically about changing how we think about a situation. No. Instead of getting caught up in our initial emotional reaction, we step back and try to reframe the situation in a more positive or objective light.
So it's kind of like reframing, which we talked about earlier.
It's very similar.
Okay.
Cognitive reappraisal is the umbrella term for techniques like reframing, where we consciously choose to see a situation from a different perspective.
Okay, so how does cognitive reappraisal help us manage chatter?
Well, let's say you make a mistake at work.
Okay.
And you immediately start beating yourself up about it. That's where chatter can take over and send you spiraling into negativity.
Right.
But with cognitive reappraisal, you can choose to see that mistake as an opportunity for learning and growth.
So instead of thinking, I'm such a failure, you can think, okay, I messed up, but what can I learn from this so I don't repeat the same mistake?
Exactly.
Yeah.
By shifting your perspective, you're essentially changing the narrative in your head.
Right.
And that can make a huge difference in how you feel and how you move forward.
It's like we're taking back control from that inner critic and choosing a more empowering story.
Precisely.
Okay.
And Kross provides some really helpful tips on how to practice cognitive reappraisal.
Okay.
One technique he suggests is asking yourself questions like, what's the evidence that supports my negative thoughts? Or is there another way to interpret the situation?
Those are great questions to consider.
Yeah.
It's like we're becoming our own therapists.
Yeah.
Challenging our negative thoughts and searching for more balanced perspectives.
And that's a skill that can be incredibly valuable in all areas of life.
Right.
Not just in managing chatter. It's about developing a more resilient mindset overall.
This has been such an enlightening conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a whole new arsenal of tools to manage my inner critic.
You do.
But before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more thing. Kross mentioned
the
power of words.
Yes. He has a whole section on the impact of language on our thoughts and emotions.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
The words we use, both in our self-talk and in our conversations with others, could have a profound impact on our mental state.
Kross explains that using more positive and affirming language can actually shift our mindset and reduce chatter.
So instead of saying, I'm so stressed out about this deadline, I could say, I'm feeling a bit challenged by this deadline, but I'm confident I can handle it.
Exactly. By consciously choosing more empowering language, you're sending a different message to your brain. And that message can have a ripple effect on your thoughts, emotions, and even your behavior.
It's like we're retraining our inner dialogue to be more supportive and encouraging.
And that's a powerful practice that can transform not only how we talk to ourselves, but also how we communicate with others.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's like we're creating a more positive and compassionate inner world. And that positivity can radiate outward into our relationships and interactions.
And speaking of positivity, I think it's fitting to end our deep dive on that note.
Okay.
Ethan Kross's chatter is ultimately a message of hope and empowerment. He shows us that we're not at the mercy of our inner critic. We have the power to choose how we respond to it. And with the right tools and strategies, we can transform that chatter into a force for good.
That's such an inspiring message to take away from this deep dive.
It is.
And for our listeners who want to explore these ideas further and learn even more practical strategies, I highly recommend checking out the 1-Hour Guide by Anil Nathu. Thank you for joining us today on this deep dive into Ethan Kross's chatter.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights and tools to help you manage your inner voice and create a more fulfilling and successful life.
Thank you for joining us today.
Visit the 1-Hour Guide website for more business insights by Anil Nathu.